Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, guys, gals, and of course, non-binary pals, welcome. This is a new series I've been wanting to try out where I play a game and share my thoughts and first impressions. It's heavily inspired by a former creator who is unfortunately no longer with us. If you find yourself enjoying this content, please leave a comment letting me know and consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel. With that being said, today, we're here to ask and answer a simple question. What's up with Palworld? Welcome to Palworld, a Pokemon competitor that has fondly been called Pokemon with Guns. This title is still in early access, and in fact only released 2 days before the recording of this video. Keeping the fact that it's a still in development title, we're going to see what it has to offer and decide if all the hype around it is worth the asking price of $30 US. First things first, the menus and options. The graphics settings are your pretty standard fare. There are standard preset options, which affect view distance, grass, shadows, effects, and textures. Options for VSync, motion blur, field of view, camera shake, and something called ride camera distance, which is likely a self-explanatory feature. Overall, I'd say that this is an acceptable first step, but I'd love to see the options for a game in this genre be really sweeping and robust. Not only to cater to people playing on any platform or system, but to allow those folks who want to spend the time to customize their experience exactly the way they want it. But at least we can turn off motion blur and adjust our FOV slider. Moving over to the sound settings, we can adjust 7 different sliders that affect background music, sound effects, the user interface, voice chat and/or dialogue, and sound from your pals. Last up is the ambient sound slider. Now, right away here, I feel like I want to see the abbreviated terms spelled out for those folks that aren't audio engineers or who are just new to gaming in general, and for there to be a clear indicator if the voice slider is for an in-game VoIP option or if they're talking about in-game dialogue. I actually don't know if this game is voice acted because I haven't played it yet. Now, because this game was developed by a Japanese studio, this might be a language localization issue, but my first thought here is that there's just a lack of clarity in the sound options. The rest of this options menu is for game settings and key bindings, but also not really. The game settings tab doesn't actually focus on any of the in-game settings, and instead focuses on settings that your inputs would affect. Now, it's nice to see sensitivity settings and an option to invert our X and Y axis, but those aren't necessarily what I would call game settings. I don't see an option here for difficulty or to tweak any of the way any of the in-game systems might work. Now, one big plus is that these menus specifically have options that work for both gamepad input and mouse and keyboard input. The user input experience is going to be fantastic, no matter how you choose to play the game. And taking a quick look at the controls menu, everything is rebindable both on the gamepad or the mouse and keyboard. I love to see that, that's really great. Heading back into the main menu, we have the survival guide, which is a massive tutorial for the game and each of the game's systems. It's laid out like an encyclopedia and is available on the Palworld main menu screen. Honestly, I'd love to see this in games way more often. Having a quick reference like this that's readily available is incredibly user-friendly. It's going to help people get integrated when they're first-time players, and it's going to help returning players feel comfortable jumping right back into their save games. This game is playable in both single-player and multiplayer, which gives me the feeling it will have a lot of longevity. And before we dive into the gameplay, I'd also like to mention that the game's developer blog and patch notes are readily available in the game's main menu. They're readable in-game without the need to follow a link to an external site in a web browser. Something as simple as that is very much appreciated. I hate when I have to click on a game menu and it takes me out of the game and into a web browser where I'm tabbing back and forth just to see how the game's updates are going. Once we select new game, we get put right into character creation, which has a lot of options but isn't necessarily the most customizable experience. Everything revolves around presets and sliders to change colors or body shapes. I'd love to see more choices here, but on the whole, for an early access title, I think this is a more than acceptable state to release in. There are loads of full release games with worse character creation options than this has right now. It is worth noting that the criticism I made earlier about the options menu not containing gameplay affecting options is something that happens in the game's character creation game start menu. Once you get going, you can customize all sorts of things like you can in Ark Survival Evolved. That includes difficulty, world spawns, experience gain rate, etc. I just wanted to point out that that is here. It's just not in the menus where I thought that it was going to be originally. So props to the developers for keeping all of those things feature complete in their game. We're going into the gameplay now. You should note that the rest of this video will contain spoilers for the first hour or so of Palworld's gameplay. Palworld is an early access title developed and published by Japanese studio Pocket Pair. It's built in Unreal Engine 5 and is currently available on Windows and Xbox. Let's see what they've managed to create. Once you've named your character and customized them to your heart's content, we get a short cutscene that introduces us to a few of the pals, and the setting for the world. We immediately cut from waking up on a beach to being in a ruined building on the top of a mountain. That's a little jarring, but we're safely in the tutorial area now, and we have free reign to explore the world of the game. Immediately, I found myself noticing that the stylized art and environmental design were reminiscent of Breath of the Wild and some of the newer Pokemon games. I really like the direction of the art here. The cartoonish style will age gracefully and keep the game looking good and approachable for what I hope is a very long time. And because this game is firmly in the Survivalcraft genre, we're capable of punching rocks and trees to collect resources. After about 10 minutes of exploring the ruins I spawned into, I made my way out into the world for the first time. And the initial environment is really giving Breath of the Wild vibes, but all the menus in crafting are much more similar to Ark. We're just dealing with Pokemon instead of dinosaurs. But looking out over this environment and seeing all the lush environments, trees, grass, and pals we're gonna get to adventure and explore with, I feel really excited, and I haven't really even started this game yet. The first task the game gives you is to craft a pal sphere, which we should note is definitely not a Pokeball. They're different. The developers over at Pocket Pair swear. Now, to capture a pal, obviously you have to battle it, but this isn't your typical Pokemon journey. Instead of being given a starter by the first NPC you come across, the player is prompted to attack pals to weaken them. So I had a look at the crafting options and I found that I could craft a club. If at any point in your life you thought to yourself, man, Pokemon doesn't feature enough animal abuse, well, this is the game for you. I sought out my first pal, called Chickpea, and I beat it nearly to death with a stick before I enslaved it and forced it to be my friend. God, I love this game. Now, once you catch your first pal, the game shifts the focus of the tutorial to base building, which is pretty much cut and paste from Ark. You spend engrams, but here they're called technology points, and you unlock crafting options for tools, clothing, and structures. Then you have to collect the necessary resources to build the things you've unlocked. So the first thing I do is build the PC from Pokemon. It's called the Pal Box in this game, where you can store hundreds of pals in different boxes, and sort them to your heart's content. I explored some of the menus, saw the Pokedex, now the Pal deck, and leveled up my health and stamina. By the 20 to 30 minute mark of gameplay here, I had really only one complaint about the game: holding down the F key to craft and build. It seems to me like an unnecessary time sink, and I wanted it to be automated like it is in so many Survivalcraft games, or to be instantaneous once I had the components and selected what I wanted. As the first in-game day started to wind down, I was completing a few of the tutorial missions and exploring the gameplay loop. There were a lot of menus and sub-menus to go through, and I decided that I would just sort of interact with them as I was prompted to by the game. The early missions revolved around building a few structures for the base, capturing pals, and upgrading the base level to give me more options as a player character. But I couldn't stop there. I had to see what was in for me at night. If this really was like Pokemon, I suspected there would be different pals available to me as the sun went down. However, because this game is an open-world survival craft that gives the player a health bar, I was incredibly cautious. Ultimately, while I did look around the first night, I decided to not get into any battles in the dark. But I did find out you can take cold damage if you get too cold, so that's fun. After a full in-game day, I was getting a bit of a hang of the systems and mechanics. I had my basic tools and access to pal spheres, and at this point I was feeling like I had interacted with all of the game's most basic systems. I wanted to see what pushing them further would do, so I spent the day capturing several more pals. I even got a tutorial mission to catch 5 of the same type of pal, a Wooloo. No wait, that's not right. A Lamball. Yeah, they're different, mostly. I mean, these fluffy little bastards even use rollout. I returned to base after having captured these new pals and explored some more of the crafting and base building, which unfortunately still had loads of single button press downtime. But my first hour of gameplay was nearing its end, and I wanted to end on something much more exciting than capturing a few basic pals and crafting my base. I wanted to end with a Pokemon battle. If this game really was Pokemon with guns and Ark with Pokemon instead of dinosaurs, it should definitely be possible to have a Pokemon battle. I took one of my pals and went out in search of a challenger. On my way to find a new and more powerful pal to battle, I ran across a chest that required a key to open, a key I did not have. A touch of mystery to close out my first impressions video? I'll take it. Because if another reason for me to dive back into the game once I've completed all my thoughts and this video is present, I'm all for it. I'm having a great time. Back to our impending battle, I found a Piplup. Well, it wasn't called a Piplup. It was called a Pangolin, a Pangolin. The jury is still out on whether the French pronunciation is correct, but it doesn't matter because it's just a Piplup. We start the battle, and immediately it's clear that beating this penguin with a stick isn't gonna work out, so I call out my Wooloo. I mean Lamball. We'll get the names right eventually, maybe. Probably not. At some point during the battle, we accidentally piss off Eikthyr from Valheim and his twin brother Eikthyr. I capture the Piplup, but I'm dangerously underleveled to fight the legendary Pokemon Xerneas from Pokemon X and Y, so I book it. I try to make a break for it up the hill, but before I can scale the cliff face like Link in Nintendo's newest release, I get struck down and killed. Going out in this game comes complete with a Dark Souls style game over screen, and I need to respawn at my base back up the cliff. Everything I had in my inventory is now on my corpse down the hill, surrounded by 2 very dangerous Pokemon. With all of that being done, my hour in the game was up, and I decided to stick to my plan and backed out of playing and recording to start putting my thoughts together for this video. For an early access Survivalcraft game, this one made an entrance even grander than Valheim did just a few years ago. The breadth of the content seems massive, with hundreds of pals to capture and an absolutely massive world map to explore and adventure in. I can easily see myself sinking hundreds of hours into this game. In fact, several of my friends on Steam have already passed 30 hours of playtime. I mean, that means people are putting in 10 plus hours of Palworld per day. And with more than 3 million copies sold already, it's clear that this game is scratching an itch for a lot of people. For gamers out there who like Pokemon, Ark, Minecraft, or The Legend of Zelda, this game seems like a no-brainer. It's surprisingly well optimized for an early access title, and there are a lot of user-friendly features built into the game already. I'd probably recommend this to folks who wanted to try out a survival crafting game for the first time. It seems like a very casual and approachable experience to get someone started on games in the genre, but it also seems like it's going to offer enough depth for veterans to really sink their teeth into and enjoy. At the beginning of this video, I set out to find what was up with this game, and if it was worth the price of $30 US. It's a fun take on an existing genre. Adding elements of Pokemon training to an existing and established style of game has honestly been a breath of fresh air. Pokemon has sadly been lacking in innovation in games in different genres for a very, very long time. So hopefully this game will have enough impact to inspire better games in the Pokemon franchise. And if not, I hope that Palworld goes down as the better version than the original product. But if that's true is yet to be seen. This game is not yet full release, and I have definitely not played enough to pass judgment like that. What I can say is that this game is absolutely worth the $30 price tag. If you're still on the fence, you can check out this game on Game Pass, either for Xbox or PC. And if you've made it this far, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments below, and let me know if you'd like to see more like this in the future. Thank you for watching.